Got to give it up for the touch of my Corona. Welcome back to this already in quite poor taste Val Verde Broadcasting podcast. We have rushed to the metaphorical presses because No Time to Die, the new James Bond film, has been delayed by 7 months when it was supposed to be released at the start of April, which is mad. I am joined, of course, by Duncan Casey, co-owner and host of Val Verde Broadcasting, to talk about this because he knows more about this than I do. So, though of course I saw the headlines and the such yesterday. Duncan,
hello.
No Time to Die. No Time to Die.
No time to release.
What's going on?
Yeah. Well, quite an interesting. I suppose. Look, I mean, on the face of it, it's you can understand the commercial decision to do this. Makes perfect sense, really. There's vast swathes of the world that are kind of where bans are in place for public gatherings, and certainly in China that's the case. For something like 11,000 movie theaters are shut down. So, and I believe the Chinese market accounted for something like I can't remember now, like getting on for $100 million take for or more for Spectre. Certainly, like the global box office, not including. It always seems really unfair that it's like domestic means America. It doesn't mean like,
yes.
You know what it's like when they say you've got an accent, and it's like, well, yeah, so do you. So does everyone. But anyway, I think the global box office perspective was something like $600+ million. So obviously, it's a massive market that they just can't afford to get wrong. And if they release on the 2nd of April as planned, then there's a good chance that there will literally be parts of the world that are just banned from going to see it.
Right.
So it seems like quite a harsh decision to move it to November, but I understand that, firstly, Bond films are always traditionally released around then anyway, and it's a quieter sort of period of the market, I think. So not to compete with summer stuff, but to push it out.
I imagine the ink is drying on the posters. Because it was supposed to come out, was it like the 4th of April?
2nd, yeah.
2nd of April.
The premiere was going to be on the 31st of March.
Christ! So they're making the Happy Meals. They're not making Happy Meals. James Bond makes you eat a toilet playset.
The muck toilet or whatever.
The muck toilet sold separately. Yeah, no, this is pretty messed up. I mean, I get it from an economic perspective. I mean, China is a big one, but it's not just China. But in terms of, as you've touched upon already, this is American product. Like, it's based on the British things. It's in the trappings of Britishness. But the Eon Bond series, if you like, are and always have been American, really, in terms of their money and their finances and stuff. Obviously, big British cast, big British crews, obviously the Bond stage and stuff. But it's kind of like Harry Potter. Really, the movies are an American production. That's Warner's, whatever. And I'm merely saying that because in terms of cultural capital, and I used to work in both tourism and kind of language education. James Bond, the things that hit well abroad from Britain are Sherlock Holmes, the Beatles, James Bond, Mr. Bean, and the Queen. Yeah. Right, there are others, but in terms of the kind of high-end export Anglophilia type shit, that's it, right? And I particularly and China is one of those markets where they go mad for red London buses and phone boxes and all the tourist stuff. I personally have managed and brought over Chinese tourist groups in the past in my previous life. And I'm saying that as a first-hand thing. I've taken groups around London and stuff and they see what they want. And yeah, this is a massive market, not just in China, but all over. I mean, China, obviously, Asia is where the outbreak has originated. So that's where it's taking a hit. And obviously the Chinese are well on top of keeping everybody inside and stuff. So no one is going to be able to see James Bond if they're all locked inside dying of coronavirus.
Yes, well, quite exactly, and it's just I suppose that's the sort of the cold hard decision making that's had to go on, and I completely get that. I think where it's unfortunate is that this film has already had a lot of delay, some of it sort of seemingly for quote unquote creative reasons, and we all know what that means, but. And then they pushed it again, so because it was originally supposed to come out on Valentine's Day, and then it got pushed again. That I wasn't sure why that happened. That was last year when they were in shooting it. I don't know if that was a decision made because of, I don't know. I'm not really sure why that.
Well, that's a kind of standard delay, isn't it? That kind of feels like the sort of delays that happen.
Well, yes, but this is now the third or fourth, because originally, obviously, it was due to come out the end of last year. Then Danny Boyle was left, and then getting Cary Fukunaga back on, getting him on, and then getting up to speed took however long, and then it was pushed to February this year, and then it was pushed to April, and now it's been pushed to November. So I just think it's really unfortunate, especially at this point, because they would have spent already an awful lot on marketing, bearing in mind that they were really gearing up to release, and so it's like trailers, it's adverts, it's posters, and all that's got to be redone, because you imagine stuff like cider bus stuff is like, that all has the date on it, everything's got to be redone. I mean, I have no idea. I mean, it's got to be tens of millions of dollars they would have lost from this. But then I suppose when you go, yeah, but think how many hundreds of millions of dollars we're potentially going to lose by releasing. I mean, I would have thought, could they not release in April and in November? That's what, well, I suppose, no, probably not.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I see where you're coming from with that, because I think release models, the traditional release model is taken an absolute kicking in the last few years with streaming services and stuff, and then you have Avengers Endgame returning to cinemas like a bit of crusty bread coming back to mop up the last bit of gravy on the plate, you know what I mean? Because it's like, that's how it surpassed Titanic, as they gave it another kick out.
Yeah.
So I suppose, yeah. I mean, or maybe just delay it till. Well, actually, I suppose the problem with delaying it, if you release it here and then release it later in the year in China, it will be the most pirated film of all time. The problem. Automatically,
yeah. And a 7-month delay would be, it would already be well out there by the time it came out in China, and all Bond fans in China would have already probably illegally downloaded it. Let's be honest, at that point.
Yeah. I kind of think, as everybody knows our dynamic, and I'm not really a Bond fan. I've watched half of Casino Royale, probably about half of Quantum of Solace. I watched all of Spyfall, which I really liked. Spectre, which I was kind of lukewarm on. We've waited a few years for this. It seems to me that the Craig era of Bond, there seems to be sort of a constant fiasco. I mean, Casino Royale came and went and was great, but it seems like there were issues with Quantum of Solace. Skyfall was great, and it seems there are issues with Spectre, and now it seems there's this. It seems kind of vexed. Is that accurate, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think Spectre was particularly beset with issues, but I know that, Quantum of Solace, they got hit with a writer's strike in the middle of all that, so that added problems, and they ended up finishing it, writing on the fly, and having to, like, Daniel Craig having to write dialogue and stuff, which is, I mean, he himself has said he's no writer, so that's fair dues. I know with this one, I mean, he broke his ankle. Well, obviously they had all the Danny Boyle stuff, then he broke his ankle at the start of production, and had to have surgery, and then it's all been sort of kicked down the road an awful lot. I don't think it's. I just think it's just bad luck on their part. I mean, it looks, for from everything I've seen of it, it looks to be quite a good film. It's got a great look to it and stuff, but it's just frustrating. I think at this point, I suppose that the hard side of this is we were so close to release, and everyone can intellectually understand why they've done it, but it's that on the emotional side of, like, that this film is perfectly done and it's sat there ready for your eyeballs, and you've got to wait now 7 months. It's like, it's like showing a starving man a roast chicken and throwing it off a mountain, and he has to go and get it. I guess, in a really stupid analogy.
Yeah, no, I get that. I mean, because it isn't arbitrary, but it feels arbitrary, because it's just kind of like, well, this is now gone. This is now sat in a cupboard somewhere for no reason. But yeah, it's kind of done. I don't know. I just kind of feel from the outside that they've never been able to catch a break with these, and I think it seems that Daniel Craig, he has to go through. He's not getting any younger, and he has to go through this insanely brutal process every time, where he's probably on set nearly every day, apart from second unit, you know what I mean? He's probably like, well, some second unit, but he's the main character. He's the name character, and it's his job to get blown up and tortured for a year every 5 years or whatever. Because his tenure started when I was in uni, which was like 15 years ago.
Well, he will. Yeah, I mean, I think it's.
Or he was announced.
It's by now he has been the longest serving quote unquote James Bond. He outstripped Roger Moore, but he's made only 4 films to date, and that's, well, I suppose he's made 5, but the 5th one's not out yet, you know. But it's he hasn't, you know, and I think partly, I mean, I've sort of whinged about this before, but it's the kind of needing to get Oscar-winning actors, needing to get high-end directors and all that on board. I mean, I don't get me wrong, that can be great. I think in the case of Skyfall, which is the sort of dragon everyone's chasing, you know, that really works. But I think come Spectre, I think it was like rinse and repeat, and that didn't. I mean, I liked Spectre. I mean, full disclosure, I enjoyed that film a lot, but I understand where it lacks compared to Skyfall. You know, so I think it's this thing of like having to get the best team together, having to get, you know, the best. And if it's not up to snuff when it finally comes out, it's kind of like, why are you doing that? And then that's why you end up with sort of 5-6 year. I mean, by the time this comes out, it will be 5 years since Spectre, which is nuts, you know. And it always used to be sort of 2 years, maybe, you know, that. And even Daniel Craig, when he started out, it was that. And then MGM had problems after Quantum of Solace, which meant that it was a 4-year gap, and then I guess 3 years between Skyfall and Spectre. But it's just been inconsistent, I suppose, and not that we expect that. You know, I don't feel that we're entitled to a regular. It's not a series in terms of, you know, it's not a TV show, but I think it's funny how it has altered the kind of Bond brand a bit. I think Daniel Craig, I mean, I know he said this is his last one. I mean, I think he still looks, I mean, like I saw someone put pictures of him up the other day from, you know, the Casino Royale to No Time to Die, and it's like, he doesn't look that different. Like, you know, he's not, he still looks like he's still got it, you know.
Yeah, it's been 14 odd years. You know, so good on him. And again, his job, I think a lot of his other roles tend to be less kind of action focused, admittedly. Like, he's done a lot more kind of character based stuff. Yeah. But again, these Bond shoots, I don't envy that, man, because not only have you got to be in great shape, because he has that kind of bit more of like a rugby player build, but he's just getting blown up. I know there's stuntmen and stuff, but he's having he's broken his ankle, he just gets decked all the time, you know. And again, you know, don't underestimate the fact that he's the main character. I mean, even Chris Evans on like an Avengers movie, the whole focus isn't on him, and even in a Captain America movie they tend to be a bit more ensemble, whereas in a Bond film it's about Bond, so he's kind of lensed for most of the film.
Absolutely. Yeah, well, I've done lead roles in films before, you know, obviously much smaller films, but, you know, I know what it's like to go for to have to get all that footage, whether it's in the space of a month or in several months. You know, it is grueling. And yeah, I mean, I know he works hard. I know they all work hard. I know none of this is sort of the fault of anyone. You know, I really don't think it is. And it's the same thing with what delays have happened before. And I think these people just want to make the best films they can. I really do. And, you know, and having been on a set at one point, you know, I can speak to that, in that they are the nicest people. They work damn hard and they get results. But so I can understand this decision. Obviously, it's hugely disappointing for those of us who are fans. But it's I get it, and I want the series to continue. So obviously, I want, you know, they need to make money. I think the problem is that setting the bar with Skyfall at $1 billion and Spectre nearly getting there as well. It's like, this is $1 billion franchise now, so you can't. That's the problem with growth, I suppose, is that you've always got to come back. If it doesn't hit, then it's disappointing. I mean, think about that. If it doesn't make $1 billion, it's disappointing. It's crazy.
Yeah, no, the bar by which these things are judged now is absolutely insane. Like, I mean, that, because I think that Simon Pegg this week was talking about the Star Trek movies, and he was just saying, well, look, they're trying to release one of those now because they don't make Avengers money, they're automatically viewed as a failure.
It's ridiculous. Because
there's this expectation, because of the back of the 2009 film, which didn't make $1 billion, I don't think, but, you know, did well. But in the intervening 11 years, now you're this kind of tentpole franchise that has to make this insane amount of money, or you're viewed as a failure. And a big part of that, I think, is just the ridiculous amount of money that's spent on marketing and advertising, and all the associated promotional stuff, which creates that situation. So I don't know. I mean, again, I am the outsider here, but I kind of feel a little bit like, I don't know. I feel that they've struggled to maintain momentum with this series, just because, like you say, Spectre was 5 years ago, which is nuts. It's just so much stop-start, and I think, there was a time where old Roger was pumping him out like you would believe.
That comes with its own problems as well, of course. But I think what a lot of, certainly from the sort of Bond fan side of it, I think what a lot of people lament is the kind of absence of the the kind of boilerplate mission film, which is not like a boring one, but one where James Bond does his job, and it's not about he's back. Where's he been? He's been retired for the last 5 years, and now he has to come back. There's always got to be a thing that brings him back into the frame. That's a kind of like Jack Reacher type dealio. It's not. Bond is in the Secret Service, and I just think this one, I don't know why, but they've always sort of written themselves into that corner of he's quit now, and then it's like, but he'll.
It does seem. Is that because of? I know when Casino Royale first came out, it felt very much that they had an eye on the Bourne films. And the Bourne series, the books and the movies are very much about a guy on the lam. Yeah. And it's kind of like, has that then stuck to this incarnation of Bond, that he has to constantly be retired or on the lam?
I love that phrase,
like,
on the lam.
It's a great. It's so old timey, and it's like, yeah, he's on the lam. See?
It just sounds so naughty. I've just this image of like Homer Simpson running off into the distance, holding his pants. He's on the lam. Yeah. I mean, yes. I think. I think you're right. I think that's possibly why. Because in Casino Royale, he quits, but he's never sort of quit, if that makes sense. Like, he kind of sends his resignation to M, but before that can happen, he's then, things kick off. Quantum of Solace, he's sort of, he kind of goes rogue, but he's still kind of but then he's kind of back by the end, But then, Skyfall gets shot, falls off a bridge, goes away for a while, and then, we thought you were dead. That's another thing. It's like, they think he's dead in this as well. It's like, what? Well, there's a line of, I don't know if they really mean it, but like Q system, like, are you still alive? Or I thought you were dead or something. And it's like,
yeah, it's a good job he's out of his probationary period, because he's
right.
He's definitely violated the terms of his contract with all this absenteeism.
It's funny because as well, we had the kind of this is brought up a lot, but like Casino Royale, Quantum of Solace, it's early Bond, right? It was always Bond Begins, basically. And then come Skyfall, they're going, it's a young man's game, you're past it.
Yes.
Like,
yes.
Hey, what? Like, and then
I did always find that with these, it's kind of like, it's kind of, it was the sort of the Batman Begins type setup. This is how he becomes Bond, and he doesn't become a 00 till he's fairly advanced in years, but that's good because you're supposed to be, experienced. I don't just give it to anyone. But then it's very quickly like, well, you're an old man now with old man's methods, and there's no place for you in this world. And it's like, you just gave him this job 5 years ago.
Well, and that looks to be doing what they're doing now. I mean, again, because they were gearing up to release in April. They've been doing all the round table stuff, and which has been great. But it's been one of those, like, because we're releasing soon, we want to tease with plot things. So it's like they've been, and now it's going to be 7 months of people sat around like making shit up. But basically, like the what's her name? Who's Lashana Lynch? She said of her character in Bond, she's like, oh, well, my character, she's the kind of she's sort of by the book, and she's sort of new school, and Bond is old school, and they clash because of that. And I was like, that's the same thesis you've had all through these films. It's like, it's the same thing. Like, the old ways are the best. Like that was Skyfall's thing.
Well, Skyfall's whole thing when they went through, and I really liked Skyfall, and I thought it was a really good film for the non-Bond fan. Skyfall, I felt, and the point was that they turned him into Sean Connery, right? They gave him the PPK and the old Aston, and and in a good way, he got to do the kind of old school Bond stuff, because they took away his internet. And
well, they deconstructed him, right? I mean, that's it seems like a standard thing to do to characters, and that's fine, but. I suppose it's that thing with Daniel's Bond, that he's always had to be living on his wits, and they don't want to give him too many gadgets and all that kind of thing, and that's great. But it's like, it seems like the way to set him up as that is to have kicked him out of the Secret Service, and he's living like on an island in a hut, when we start.
Yeah.
And he's living on his wits, and now, you know, he's a man out of time. And I suppose it's that thing of like, who walks around in a business suit nowadays, you know, so he is by definition sort of anachronistic. And you have to come up with a reason for that. I think they've done very well at that, because they've kind of made him out to be like, oh, you know, I do it because I like it. I like, you know, I'm an old school kind of guy, and you know, it's no longer, you know, when Connery was around, that's like us just walking around in jeans and a t-shirt. You know, it's like everyone had a suit and smoked a billion cigarettes. You know, that's just what that was. But yeah.
Well, you know, he's 52, right? And I think what the problem with this is that, you know, they essentially take place in real time, and we haven't really aged with him because there are so many gaps between the films. So he was like our age roughly when they cast him.
He was 38.
It's kind of mid. Well, there you go then. So yeah, he's a couple of years older than we are now when they cast him, and it's like, yeah, 38-year-old becomes 00. I see that, because it's weird when you give it to like a 21-year-old or something. It's like, well, he's supposed to be like an elite agent, like. Well. Yeah. But in the intervening 16 years, we've spent 8 or 10 hours with him. So all this stuff about like, you're a dinosaur, you're getting old, and it's kind of like, well, we missed all that.
Yeah. Well, this is what I mean about the workaday Bond stuff, though. It's like, well, it would be nice to have some films where it was just a mission. It was like walking to, because that's what's set up at the end of Skyfall as well, which is so frustrating. It goes into M's office, dossier on the table with his number on it. You know, time to get to work. Yes, and you're like, yes, here we go, fantastic. And then it's like cut to Spectre, and he's like defying M, and he's going off and being all roguey again, and it's like, really? I mean, it's fine.
Yeah, teeing up James Bond as James Bond, and then not.
Yeah.
Going through it. Yeah, I mean, I've said this before, and the example going back to this is that the Judge Dredd film, the 1995 one, they take away his job in the first 15 minutes, and he is a character like Bond who is defined by his job. And if you take his job away, that's just a guy, really. And Bond's a bit more. I admit Bond's a bit more than that, because there's a whole attitude and swagger and stuff to Bond. But you know, not having him do Bond stuff is quite frustrating to watch.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's like, what are we doing? I think because they are no longer what's the word? What are they, episodic rather than serialized? Whichever way around it is. What were they before? Because now they are. Are they serial? No. What's serialized? Serialized is where
serialized is where it's a longer form story, and episodic is where it's self-contained.
Right. There you go.
So the Marvel films are serialized.
Very good. So these films are serialized, whereas before they were episodic. And so I think in doing so, I mean, it's great that we've moved to more kind of character-driven plots and all that, and I think that's fine, but it's like, what I suppose that's inherently done is meant that the stakes always have to be personal, and it always has to be, you know, something that is like personal to Bond, and that's why you end up with like Blofeld's my brother, or my adopted brother, and it's like, no, they did that in Austin Powers, man. Like,
it really, that was just embarrassing, man. It was like, that really is.
It just could have gone from the film, and no one would know the difference. Someone could edit that out, and no one would know. You know, it's like, I like, again, like I said, I like Spectre, but that just felt like, why? Just because you have to make this about him, and it's his, you know, and he set everything up from from day one, is like, what are you going to do with that now? You know, and it just seems like with no time to die. It's like, oh, now a secret from his past comes back to haunt him, and he didn't know at all. When it comes out, it's going to be it's like, oh, okay.
He's got 2 bums. You can't have 2 bums. It's James Bond.
Double O's.
No, the clue wasn't a name all along.
Double O's in his 7.
You see, James, you have an extra discreet anus.
always back to the poo. No time.
I don't know what you mean. No time to poo.
But yeah,
poo time to die.
What I just quickly wanted to touch on as well is like whether or not you think this is the mark, because obviously Mission Impossible 7, they've halted production on because of coronavirus, because they were shooting in Italy. Do you think this is going to be, like, going forward, this is what a lot of tentpole movies are going to do?
The pandemic is interesting. I mean, something in terms of, so I was supposed to film a TED Talk next week.
Oh yes.
Which I'm now not.
Oh no.
Because of Corona. So I was supposed to film a TED Talk next week, just as camera operator. It's not my contract, but I'm hired in. I'm not doing that because it's been cancelled. That was at Cambridge University. I have a big show in Manchester next week, exhibition I was supposed to cover. Don't know if that's going to happen. I just did one at NEC last week. There were NHS signs and a hand sanitizer everywhere. Seen talk online now that Glastonbury might not go ahead.
Oh, God.
And festival season, I think I'm not going to Glastonbury. I'm going to a different one in August. But public gatherings of that nature, festival season, not looking good. The government are now saying that they might clamp down on public gatherings. There was talk that they would take the heat off of murder cases to police the streets if things got really bad. They've got a kind of... So in terms of what's being discussed in the day-to-day, that's just day-to-day life. And this is going to sound so trivial bringing it back round, but then in terms of how it affects the releasing in our industry, it's going to be interesting. I mean, it's going to be very difficult to sort of get people hyped for the new whatever when, I'm not saying it's going to come to this. It's not the fucking Stand, right? You're not going to have to choose between Mother Abigail and Randall Flagg or any shit like that. But people are stockpiling food. There's hysteria. At the moment, there's a lot of hysteria. Yeah. And I think in the face of that, it's going to be very hard to sell people entertainment. So I do wonder if anyone else... The fact that James Bond has delayed by 7 months, a month out with a completed film, or what we believe to be a completed film, that's very telling to me. I mean, that's very telling.
The positive side of this is if this kicks on into the summer, and the same thing happens with all the summer releases and the tentpole movies, there's going to then be this massive pile-up at either the end of the year or the early next year or whenever they'll then push to, that's going to be a problem. Because I think what James Bond has done, Eon have been quite clever in that they've leapt over anyway the summer period, and gone straight to November, which, though galling because it's a long time, is actually smart because obviously they want to avoid any conflict. But I think they've also got the eyes on the fact that if then all those films in the summer have to start delaying, they've kind of got in there first and they've got their slot. Because I think that, if everyone starts pushing into the autumn winter months, then I mean, like you said, it's history. I suppose the doubly frustrating thing is that the stats on this are not that alarming. Yes, it's spreading. Yes, it's bad, and I don't want to get in. I'm certainly no scientist, but it's like the scientists are saying, it's like, look, this is it's it is going to be a pandemic, but it's only affecting it's only going to be dangerous to, what is it, 0.01% of...
it's the kind of in terms of, it's the top and bottom of the age spectrum normally in a pandemic situation, and those who are already immune compromised, which is awful. For example, my brother's asthmatic, both my parents are pensioners, they are both in the high risk group. But if they do all die, I only have to fight my little brother for the house, and he weighs less than me, so I think I can do that. I think the other thing, there's a question also of social responsibility, because through the medium of film exhibition, you are asking people to gather and sit close together with strangers in dark rooms,
of course,
where food and drink is consumed. So it's the social responsibility in doing so, and also the willingness of the public to then do that. So I think a lot of this summer is going to be pretty tense for quite a lot of distributors and exhibitors, I think, because of that. And like I say, I was at the NEC last week. It's one of the biggest exhibition centres in the whole country, and I turned up because I stayed over the night before. I turned up at 7:30. I sat because the exhibition was closed. It was KBB. It was a kitchen, bathroom, and bedroom show. I sat outside and sat all my bags down, and I got a real dry tickle in my throat, as happens sometimes. And I had about a 10-minute coughing fit, and then I looked round, and everyone was looking at me. And then I looked around a bit more, and I saw the massive NHS sign, "Do you have coronavirus? Maybe you should stay home, bring some hand sanitizer." So all these exhibitions and stuff that I do on the regs are being affected by it, just simply because, much like movies, they are large gatherings of people in public places. And Birmingham International is connected to an airport and a railway station, so it's probably, and Birmingham and London, two most populous places in Britain, homes of IMAX cinemas, Cineworlds, Odeons, you name it. All the exhibitors are there in those cities, and all the premieres and stuff happen there as well. So and all have underground metro systems, hubs of public transport. So encouraging anyone to do anything in public at the moment is going to be incredibly difficult owing to hysteria and paranoia.
Yeah, I mean, it's right. It's because it's two sides of that, and I agree with you. I think it's one of those things where you go, look, it's unlikely to affect any of us, but there's that sort of social contract that says, but if there's a thing you can avoid that you don't need, you don't need to go to the cinema, then you know, is it worth doing? I mean, don't get me wrong, there's more to it than that, but in terms of the movie going public, it's like.
Yeah, well, you know, in danger of trivialising the issue, I'm just trying. You know, I think we're both trying to stay in our lane, aren't we?
Yeah.
Because this is what we discuss.
Yeah.
So we are trying to stay in our lane rather than be distasteful in any way.
Yeah.
But let's see. I mean, maybe this is the first domino to fall.
Yeah, I think it might be. It depends. It really depends. I mean, I think the sort of, you know, the experts are saying at the moment is that we're probably looking at another 4 to 6 weeks before we're kind of over it, or before we're at the peak or whatever, you know. So it's like that's potentially what we're looking at. But then, you know, I mean, odds are it's not going to be that bad. But yeah, you know what, be careful. And a thing like this, it's like, well, if you had $1 billion franchise that you were releasing in the start of April, and there was a chance that the whole world was a large parts of the world were going to be literally banned from going to see it, you probably wouldn't, you know, and you could do something about it, you would, wouldn't you? So, no, it makes sense. It just sucks, I guess.
Yeah, well, you know, let's see. For most people, like we touched on, it's going to be a very nasty case of flu. And look, we live through SARS and bird flu. One of these comes along every few years.
Yeah.
So, you know, just don't let a beleaguered-looking person sneeze in your mouth, and
well, I get this because
you'll be fine.
It's COVID-19, isn't it? It's not coronavirus. Is just the virus that the flu is. Basically.
Yeah, it's like the relationship between HIV and AIDS. There's no such thing as the AIDS virus. That's the syndrome brought about by the HIV virus. Right. So it's a similar relationship.
Sure.
Because there's a disease, and then there's the illness, if you like. I'm no fucking epidemiologist, so I don't got the phraseology, man. But we just talk about movies, brother. You know. Well, there you go. I don't know. I quite enjoyed the last 10 minutes of disease talk. But we'll wrap this one up, shall we? We're coming back at you with one about the Batman. For there are things to discuss there. You can find us, if you don't have looked at the statistics, you know, quite a lot of people who watch our shows are not subscribed. Most of them are, but some aren't. And if you do watch these on a regular and you're not subscribed, just hit the subscribe button, do the bell thing that people talk about, give us a like, leave a comment, put a thumbs up, put a thumbs down. It's all engagement. We have merchandise. We have loads of stuff. Go look at the description. It's a good fun time. So we're going to release this pretty much straight away. I actually I did a very minor live tweet whilst we were recording this. I did 2 tweets whilst we were recording, telling people what's going on. So there you go. So that's it from us. We're going to be back probably tomorrow with the Batman video. I don't think.
Yes.
Cool. Well, I'm gonna call an ending to this meeting of the Midnight Society. Tattington Byward.